What is up, everybody? Before we get into today's episode of It Takes Balls, I just wanted to share a little exciting tidbit. My wife and I wrote a children's book titled What's Wrong with Billy's Balls? What's Wrong with Billy's Balls uses golf as a euphemism for checking for testicular cancer and for asking for help when you believe that it's needed. We hope that this book will open up the conversation for survivors with their sons, but the story also applies to everybody in general. You can pick up What's Wrong with Billy's Balls on Amazon or on testiscancer.org. It's important to note, though, that proceeds from the book, no matter where it's sold, benefit the organization. However, purchasing it on testiscancer.org benefits the organization a little bit more. And while you're on testiscancer.org, make sure you pick up some of these cool shirts. We have a lot of educational materials that you can distribute in your community or show your support for your loved one or just your pride as a survivor. So again, What's Wrong with Billy's Balls, available now. Thank you guys so much. Let's get into today's episode. It Takes Balls is brought to you by our new sponsor, D's Nuts. Yes, you heard that right. If you've never heard of them, check them out at grabdsnuts.com. But warning, these are not your grandparents' peanuts. D's Nuts is really shaking up the nut game. They're gourmet, fun, and packed with flavor. Whether you're a fan of savory flavors like ranch, sriracha, or hot cheddar, spicy like ghost pepper, or if you have a sweet tooth like me, you like the banana pudding. D's Nuts has something for everyone. But D's Nuts aren't just about taste, they're about making a difference. For every bag, can, or piece of D's Nuts merch purchased using the coupon code NUTCHECK on grabdsnuts.com, you can save 10%, and another 10% gets donated towards supporting Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. So the next time you're craving a snack that's both delicious and meaningful, reach for D's Nuts. Because when it comes to supporting Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation, it takes balls and it takes D's Nuts. Available at grabdsnuts.com, Amazon, and Walmart locations nationwide. D's Nuts, a delicious, healthy snack in a variety of fun flavors and making a difference one nut at a time. The stories shared on It Takes Balls are unique to the individual sharing. Always speak with your trusted medical provider for treatment options specific to you. Welcome back to It Takes Balls, presented by Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation. Today I'm joined by Joe Karasek. He's a testicular cancer survivor and now author from Florida. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Stephen. Super grateful to be able to share my story with you today in hopes that it just provides some, strength and inspiration to others as they go through their battle.
When you submitted your story many moons ago, and we do have a backlog of applicants, so I appreciate you hanging on. You mentioned that you had a troubled upbringing. So before we get into your testicular cancer story, I want to talk about that because I know that, that's common. So, people always have their own unique journey.
Absolutely. I was blessed to have both a mother and father in my life growing up. Both of them, when they were growing up, my father didn't have a father in his life, and struggled a lot with money and things like that. And, when they had my sister and myself, we were, didn't have a lot of money. We weren't financially blessed. We lived in Baltimore. That's where I grew up. And I was born in downtown Baltimore, Mercy Hospital. And, my parents worked really hard to build a life for us and to support us and take care of us. But, the fact of the matter is that we didn't have a lot, when I was first, born and going through my childhood and growing up. And, the area that I grew up in, drugs were very prevalent, and Baltimore is the heroin capital of the world. The counties surrounding it have the most opiate deaths per population, in the entire country. So I was around drugs a lot. I started doing drugs at a very early age. And I didn't really have a belief in anything bigger than myself, a belief in God, a purpose essentially. So I really struggled with that, as I got older, and I was around a lot of violence. I was robbed at gunpoint at 16 years old at my first job at McDonald's. Was robbed at gunpoint, carjacked at 26 years old or 25 years old before I moved down here to Florida. It was around COVID, so a lot of things were crazy then. But yeah, really struggled with drugs, and a big addiction of mine throughout my 20s was alcohol and cocaine. And the combination of those two drugs caused me to really hurt a lot of people that I loved, and neglect them and not give them the attention and love that they deserved and needed, and really ultimately the respect that they deserved and needed. And I really just, again, struggled with purpose, man. And I never really struggled with a job. In my opinion, I'm an intelligent guy. I've always been able to kind of support myself. And so people had this outside view of my life, and they were like, Joe's doing good, and Joe's having fun, and Joe's just enjoying himself. Joe takes care of, himself financially, so everything is okay. And the reality of that, spiritually, mentally, physically, I was not. And I was hurting myself and hurting a lot of people. And, ultimately, my book talks a lot about this, how I did that and how I carried around a lot of regret and shame and remorse for that. And as I went through, kind of that journey, I ended up losing somebody that, really loved me and was really important in my life because I just did not, show them the love that they deserve, and it broke my heart. And so I kind of ran away down here to Florida afterwards, as a lot of people do. And when I got down here, man, I was really lost and I got into a lot of legal trouble. Was not living a good life. I got arrested. I was sent to the hospital. They found me in an alleyway with puke all over myself after drinking too much. I got arrested for public intoxication. And then in January of 2023, I got arrested for my second DUI. And at that point, I was at a really low point in my life and I started to realize like I need to start to change some things about my life. Like I am not living a good life. And truthfully, I looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm not a good person at all. And I'm not serving anything greater than myself. And so really I started to think about, what is it that I needed to serve? And I was like, okay, like I have family that loves me, like, and I have friends that love me. Like I need to start like trying to prioritize them. But I still was drinking even after that. And I was still doing cocaine. I was cutting back on it, but I was still, in all those vices and serving myself and serving my sin. And then around that time was when the signs of my testicular cancer started to present themselves. And I started to get the lower back pain and the groin pain, and my testicles started to swell up. And it was actually noticed by a friend of mine. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor at the urgent care, I put it off for as long as I could because I was going through so much with the DUI and so much with work. And I was just like, the last thing I need is to deal with this health problem. Like I'll go when I need to go and get whatever taken care of. It's probably just some like infection or something like that. You know what I mean? Like something not that serious. Because really it started rapidly swelling up. It wasn't really like I've read other stories where it's just like a small bump that slowly grows. Like for this, it kind of was just like started swelling up out of nowhere. And when I noticed it, I put it off for a couple weeks, stupidly, and it just got worse and worse and worse and continued to get worse. And then in late April of 2023, I went to the urgent care, and urgent care said that I had an STD, and I was like, that doesn't seem right, but okay. I was like, all right, if that's what you say. And so they ran a bunch of blood work, and I got some pills and started taking them, and it just didn't get better over that week. And I called them and I was like, this is not getting better. And they were like, yeah, we just got your results back and you don't have an STD. If it's not getting better, you need to go to the emergency room. And I was like, okay. And I ended up putting it off for like another week because again, just being an idiot and not taking care of myself. That was the type of person that I was at that time. And so I ended up going to the hospital, and yeah, the nurse pretty much looked at me after doing the ultrasound and everything like that and didn't even really wait for like blood work or anything to come back. He was like, look, man, he was like, I've seen this before. Like, this is cancer. Like, we're pretty sure. Like, it would be very, very, very strange if this is not. It has all the signs of it. And he was like, don't worry. There's usually a good prognosis with testicular cancer. The treatments aren't too bad a lot of the times, but I know that he was just trying to comfort me at that time because he didn't know the severity of what I was about to go through over the next, course of the next 6 months to a year. And so I, kind of laid in that bed, and I talk about this in my book a lot. I started to kind of make jokes around it, like that I had a Super Bowl and that I was giving and it was giving me special powers. They were going to take my special powers away, and that I was going to it's just a bunch of funny things, that I tried to like cope almost with to make yourself feel better. Because when you are in that situation, you do try to just make yourself feel better in that regard because there's really nothing else that you can do. But really, Stephen, when I had that surgery and I was laying in that hospital bed, and I had to call my mom and my dad and let them know what was going on, and they flew down to see me and everything. I felt as though I had hit rock bottom, because I was going through so much prior to that, and now my health was being stripped away. And it was like, even if I make it out the other side of this, my life is such a mess. outside of just this cancer and this health scare that I don't know if I even have the strength to push forward. And so when I got out of the hospital, I pulled into and I talk about this in my book, I pulled into a firearms parking lot and I was going to buy a gun and I was going to drive to the beach and I was going to kill myself because I just felt like I had no hope and I didn't understand why I was going through all of this because I didn't believe in anything greater than myself. So it felt like I was just suffering for no reason. And, ultimately I had a thought in my head. I was like, can I even buy a gun? Because I'm got a DUI and a pending charge and stuff like that. And I ended up Googling it. And, there was mixed information about it, but just that little break and pause gave me a moment to think about it and say, maybe I should look for a reason to push forward from this. And so my DUI ended up being a blessing in my life because if I didn't have that moment of pause and clarity, I don't know what would have happened outside of that. Everything might have changed and the course of my life and direction might have changed. And so, I try to preach to people now that the terrible things that happen to you in life can always become a blessing if you decide to look at them that way, and that going through your pain, you can always come out the other side of light and see this beauty in what those terrible moments brought to you and how much stronger it's made you. And the resilience that you gain from that is something that you don't get in the good moments. You know what I mean? The good moments don't bring that to you. They bring you comfort, joy, happiness, and all of that. But your bad moments bring you that strength, that resilience, you know what I mean? That will to push forward to get through all the things that you need to in order to enact change in the world and change in your life. And so, I was going through, that, like period of my life. And really at that point, I was surrendering to the world, to the universe, to God. At that point, I didn't know what it was. And I said, just please start to show me a sign. Like, I have no idea. Like, I don't I don't know, like just show me something. Like I'm open to seeing anything. Like give me a reason to live, basically. And it was through that point that I started to see love in my life and I started to find it everywhere. And it started really Memorial Day weekend. I had a bunch of friends hanging out with me that weekend. They were coming over and supporting me right before I started my battle with chemo. My buddy, Corey from Baltimore, he flew into Florida. I told him I didn't know if I was going to be up to doing anything. He said, I don't care. I'll hang out at the house with you. If you just want to sit on the couch, I'll sit on the couch with you because I love you and I'm going to be there for you before this. And so I just felt this like outpouring of like unconditional love for me because I couldn't give any love to anyone at that time. And I still received so much love from everyone else. And so really that was the start of my journey of discovering love in my life. And, as I went through chemo and sat on the couch sick and wasn't able to do anything, I went through just to kind of backtrack and explain a little bit more about what my specific diagnosis was, because I know that that's probably a little important to the story on a testicular cancer podcast. I was diagnosed originally with stage 2B testicular cancer. I had 85% embryonal carcinoma, which is why it was so aggressive and why it started swelling up so quickly. And I had 9% yolk sac, 9%. There was 9% something else, 4% yolk sac, and then I had a small amount of choriocarcinoma in there as well. And that's another very aggressive one as well. And so it had spread and metastasized to my lymph nodes in the retroperitoneal area, up the groin and up in the abdomen and stuff like that. So they said, chemo was necessary. I was going to have to do 3 BEP, which is bleomycin and etoposide. You do the 8 hours a day, then you go for like a couple day break, and then you go back for a day. And then, so that was over the course of the next 9 weeks. So I was about to start that treatment, which is, if any of you have gone through that, it is pretty rough, man. And it takes a lot out of you. And so, as before that, I felt all that love, and that really gave me a reason to push forward. And I was like, I've got all these people that love me. Like, I don't love myself and I don't love life, but as long as I know that people love me, like there's a reason, there's something out there for me. It's a reason for me to push forward through this. And so, as I went through that journey, I had to sit with myself, during chemo, because you're too sick to do anything, man. Like you don't have the energy to work out. You don't have the energy to go out. I couldn't drink. Like if I would have drank, like I would have destroyed my body even more. So I finally, for the first time, wasn't drinking for an extended period of time. I wasn't doing drugs. Wasn't distracting myself with women, the things that we utilize to distract ourselves from actually like making progress and pushing forward.
Yeah. I was going to ask, when exactly did you when was the cut to kind of go clean and sober, I guess? And was it just cold turkey?
So it was a journey, actually. So I did in May decide that when chemo started, that I was going to not drink anymore for the course of chemotherapy. And so I didn't drink the entire time through chemo, but I did drink again until I got completely sober. And I'll kind of go through that as I go through this journey. But I did decide, I was like, you know what, man? I was like, I was looking up, and I talk about this in the book too. I was looking up before I started chemo, like, can you drink on chemo? Is it safe to drink on chemo? Like, how, like, and then I like kind of had this realization. I was like, what the hell is wrong with you, Joe? Why are you trying to drink and poison yourself when you have this other poison going inside of you to kill these cells? You know what I mean? Like, why would you put your body through more harm than it already is going through? So I kind of had this realization, like, you need to quit drinking for these 9 weeks, even just to prove to yourself that you can do it. So I did quit drinking for while I went through chemo. And, really, man, I was so sick. I just sat on the couch for most of the time. And, I really had to sit with the pain of the things that I had done over the course of my life, and also sit with the pain of the things that people had done to me, and really just sit and reflect, like growing up where I grew up, like, people stole from me, stole money from me. People, a lot of things, like people that I loved and trusted abandoned me in times when I needed them throughout my addiction and course like that. And like, I really had to just sit with myself and feel that pain for the first time in a really long time, and just understand that it's in there. I have shame, I have regret, I have remorse. I can forgive it, though. Forgive myself, forgive others, forgive everything that's been done to me, and ultimately push forward and carve a path forward in my life. And so as I went through that journey, that was really what I was finding, was forgiveness in my heart, forgiveness for myself. And that was allowing me to push forward and give me a reason to live, that, that forgiveness, that unconditional love. And so, again, didn't really realize what was happening at that time, but I knew that I was receiving signs that this is the answer, this is the way to move forward. And so I kind of went through that, and then at the end of July I finished my chemo, the 3 BEP. And so once you do that, I'm sorry, the other kind of tumor that I had in the testicle from the biopsy was teratoma. So the concern with my abdomen was that if there's teratoma in there, the chemo was not going to be able to get rid of that. And so I finished my BEP in July. All my blood levels were good. I got rid of all the H beta HCG and the APT, I think it is. All of that was at normal levels now. But I had to wait until September, until, they give you a little week period where you have to like kind of like let all the dust settle before they scan you again. I tell people this all the time. I say, I think that that's what made my journey so crazy with this, is the type of cancer I had, because it wasn't like, it was like, hey, you got this cancer, we're going to do 6 months of chemo and then you're going to be done. You know what I mean? Or like 3, it was like, hey, you're going to do this and then you're going to wait and see if you need to give more treatment. And then you're going to wait and see if you need to give more treatment. So it kind of just put me on this like path of like this journey of like, finding myself as I went through this pain and like, almost like an unknown period. And so in August of 2023, I really did go on a reflection period of like, what did I love about life? What did I want to do in life? And I talk about in my book, basically how the book is structured is I do the first chapter, which is the story of Joe. The second chapter is called The Train Tracks, and it talks about chemotherapy, and it's a journal entry style of the days that I went through chemo and my thoughts and reflections, because really I didn't do anything physically those days. It was all introspective thought of what I went through. And then the third chapter starts with this kayak trip. And before I get into the kayak trip, would you mind if I shared part of the chemotherapy journal entry that I had? It's called The Train Tracks, and it was about how I felt as I went through chemo. Do I have some time to give that? It's about a minute.
Yeah, that's fine. And then once you finish that, I have a couple questions just up to where we got now.
Absolutely. So I named this after something that I wrote about the train tracks, and how chemotherapy feels like you're lying on a set of train tracks, and unable to get up. So this is on June 25th of 2023. Every day, I wake up on a set of train tracks. My body is a wreck, barely able to move to sit up and assess the situation. I can see the lights and hear something approaching from the distance. Although it is recognizable to me, it's still very far away. The fact that it's so far away provides some kind of comfort. I feel as though there is time to get off the tracks. I'm not succumbing to the train, but it's there. The longer I take to get up, the louder it gets, and the brighter the lights appear in my peripheral vision. The longer it takes for me to get up, the weaker it feels that I become. The strength that once existed within me is waning, and my body cannot lift itself off the tracks. I yearn for the strength to pull myself out of this situation. If I could pray for anything in the world, it would be for the strength to lift my body off of these tracks and onto another path. For now, I lie here and wonder what I must do to summon the strength to leave. I feel as if I am here alone. I don't have a hand to help me off of this. Even if there were a hand here, I don't know if it will be able to lift me off of these tracks. It's something that, in some capacity, I must do myself. As I ponder this thought, the train has gotten slightly closer to me. As I try to figure out how to get off these tracks, I am losing my most valuable asset, time. I feel like I have a lot of time, but what if that is an illusion in itself? It's hard to see the train. It's hard to know how fast it's coming. There is a lot in the unknown when going through this. The train may be moving a lot faster than it once appeared. I am at mercy to my mental fortitude. There is a source of power I can tap into to get myself off these tracks before this train comes, and I must find it. I'm not sure if I know what it looks like or completely understand what it feels like. For now, I'm trying so hard to be strong, but I've never been more scared. I pray every day for the strength to get through this, and I pray every day that I don't die. Whatever is out there, I hope to draw strength from it. The universe or God, whatever could show me the light.
Amazing. It sounds like testicular cancer, I mean, really saved your life.
It did. It really did, man. And I talk about this all the time, that it was a blessing to me. And sometimes, even when I'm speaking with other survivors, they almost like balk at me, or they find that hard to believe, because for a lot of people it did destroy them in a lot of ways, and I totally respect that and understand and value that opinion. But just for me, what I went through, it was a wake-up call, dude, because when your health gets stripped away from you at 27 years old, it's like something's not right in my life. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that like I have to change. I have to reflect on this. Like, why am I going through this suffering? Why am I here? And it was a wake up call for me, man. And it was 100% the best thing that ever happened to me. Physically, you know, it did a lot of things that destroyed me. I've got permanent tinnitus from it, which I know a lot of other survivors have that same thing, the loss of hearing. You know, my abdomen from which I'll get into having to do the RPL and D, but my abdomen, you know, I constantly am having to do yoga and stretch and just fix my posture and strengthen my core and all that, because it's been a process to try to rehab that. But I wouldn't change anything for the world, because mentally it has put me on the right track, and I'm finally, you know, trying to serve things that are greater than myself and help others, which is ultimately what my purpose always was. I just was so selfish and had such a big ego, and I was such in my own head that I didn't understand that. And so I wasn't serving my purpose, and it was leaving me lost and helpless and directionless in life.
Yeah. I want to talk specifically about and actually, before I ask this question, I just want to say I've only known you for 20 minutes, and I'm proud of how far you've come and you know what you're doing now.
I appreciate that.
But like with the drugs and alcohol, was there any concern, or like were there withdrawal symptoms when you're going through chemo? Because alcohol withdrawal can be deadly in itself. And then, you know, drug addiction withdrawals, was there any concern with that, and the pain meds that you were having to take for any surgeries? Like, talk about that.
So I realized that alcohol, I was always a binge drinker. So it wasn't like I would drink every single day. It was like I would go out every single Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, and completely black out and have no idea where I was, no idea what I was doing or anything like that. And I would go through withdrawals throughout the week, the shaking and things like that, but not bad enough to where like I felt like I was going to have to go to the hospital. And typically if I didn't drink for like a week or two, then I would like start to like come back in. But you know, truthfully, Stephen, the alcohol was a symptom of a bigger problem. The alcohol and the drugs were not a problem for me. Really, it was a symptom of a problem. And the problem was that I just did not love myself, and I did not love my life, and I had no purpose. And so I didn't want to sit and actually face myself and figure out what it was that I wanted to do in life. What was my purpose? What did I do? What did I want to serve? It was much easier for me to just black out my life with alcohol and not have to think about it. You know what I mean? So once I actually decided, like, I'm not going to do this anymore, and life kind of forced me to not do it anymore because I was so nauseous and sick from the medicine, you know, I started to realize that. And so I started to realize, okay, like, I'm using this as a tool to to run away from myself. And ultimately, like everything that I want in life and that I know I need to serve lies on the other side of actually facing myself and facing my demons and facing this problem. So, no, I didn't really go through too much like alcohol withdrawal or drug withdrawal or anything like that. I did a little bit of pain meds for the RPLND, but I didn't take like any of the pills they took me home with. I just threw them away. Because truthfully, like at that point, like the pain that like I don't know at that when I got to that point, I was kind of like really getting over like my like addictions and things like that. But I did drink before that. I won't get into that in the story, but yeah, no, I didn't have too much of a problem with that, Stephen, which is good, thankfully. I kind of realized mentally like that these were symptoms of a much larger problem in my life.
Yeah, well, that's great. So let's get into the RPL&D now. So you said you drank a little bit before that. So we'll talk about that. But I guess you had your scan, and then what did that show?
Yeah, so in August, I after chemo, I really like went on an introspective journey of just like trying to find out what it was that I did love about life outside of alcohol and doing all that because I never really spent time with myself, and so I didn't drink throughout that month. Then I went for my scan at the end of September, and or I'm sorry, at the end of August, and they found masses still in my abdomen that were over. I think the cutoff was 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter, and there was a couple that were over that. So they believed that it was teratoma, and they wanted to remove it. And so at that point, man, I was just really broken because they talked about all the side effects, and one of the side effects was not being able to ejaculate anymore. And I did store sperm before chemo and stuff like that, but like you think about sex and pleasures and indulgence and desire and things like that, and you're like you think about like it's never going to feel the same again if that's the case, you know what I mean? Like, and so like you start to think about like, will I even find a partner like that's okay with that, you know what I mean? Like will women judge me for that, you know what I mean? I'm gonna have a huge scar on my abdomen. It's gonna take months for me to rehab to even walk normal. Yeah, am I ever gonna walk normal again? Am I ever gonna physically feel the same again, you know what I mean? Like you start to and then there's also like they say a small chance of death, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff, and you just start to really like contemplate your mortality and like what does my life look like on the go forward, and like I'm already so physically broken from this chemo that I just went through. I can't hear anything. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, what is this going to do to me physically? Like, is it worth it to push forward? And at that point, I felt like I had no reason to live again. And so, the weekend of Labor Day, my friend Corey came back down again. My friend Derek came back down to be with me before my surgery. And I hung out with all my friends down here in Florida. And all my friends down here in Florida just really played. I met them all. I met them all when I was at the lowest point in my life. And, they really were like the first people that I met that kind of put me on a pathway to like spirituality and like believing something greater than yourself and just really ultimately like having purpose in life and like wanting to serve other people and help other people. And so, they really just helped me so much throughout this process. And I call them my Florida fam because they are family to me and they saved my life in a lot of ways as I went through this. And so that weekend, we all hung out and I did drink that weekend. And I blacked out the first night because I was just so upset with everything. And then I woke up the next morning and I was even more upset because I didn't remember anything. I didn't know what I did, if I embarrassed myself, if I hurt someone else, if I screamed at them, because I would get angry when I was drunk because I was angry at myself and angry at life for not having purpose. And so that weekend, I really just regretted drinking and regretted it for the rest of the weekend. But, through that regret and feeling that pain, I started to feel all of that unconditional love again and those people surrounding me. And that unconditional love that I felt from them and from my family, and so many my family members reach out to me, throughout throughout this process and things like that. My mom and dad, they literally like a blessing to me. They bought a house in the area a month before I got diagnosed with cancer. So they were able to come down here and help take care of me during the whole thing and stuff like that. Like truthfully, like so blessed. Like I felt so blessed that weekend, just realizing like everybody that I had in my life. And I started to see the specific love that I had for all of these people, how they were caring, compassionate, kind, how I wanted to be more like these people, how they wanted to give to others, how they wanted to serve their family, how they wanted to not be selfish and not be, greedy and not all these things. And I I realized like these are the people that I want to surround myself. This is the type of people that I want to be like and aspire to be like. And so after that weekend, I really felt all the unconditional love that people had for me. And I started to feel and see the unconditional love that I had for people around me. And at that point, I really started to have love in my life. And I started to see it everywhere. I started to see it out in nature. I started to see it out in, driving. I started to see it in places that you would never expect it. And the nurse that was taking care of me, you know what I mean? And it was just like love was literally all around me. And I was like, love is the reason that I have to live and push forward. And so, after that weekend, I went a couple weeks without. I decided I wasn't going to drink, after that weekend. So I went a couple weeks and had my surgery. I did, what's it called? Yeah, had the surgery. Everything went really well. I was taken care of by, I just want to shout him out, Dr. Wade Sexton at Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, Florida. And Dr. Wade Sexton, if any of you are listening to this, I highly encourage you to just go read his backstory. He is a super accomplished man, literally one of the best individual souls that I've ever met in my life. Just really I felt his care and compassion that he had for his patients and how he wanted to take care of them. And he wanted to make sure that he had the best outcomes for his patients. And he didn't rush the surgery and he didn't just blow through it and mess anything up. Like he took his time, man. And my scar looks amazing. All the follow-up appointments that I've had with him, like you can just tell when somebody really cares about their job and they're doing it because they want to help people. And I really, really, really appreciate him, man. He saved my life and I'm about to cry talking about him. He's really just an amazing person. And I really, really just am thankful for that he was put into my life to help me throughout that journey because he just gave me so much wisdom and introspective about the situation that I was going through. And so, yeah, I stayed in the hospital for a few days and, I ended up leaving there and going back to my house and just being around my family and working to get myself back into the physical condition that I wanted to be in. I started to feel a little bit better, and so I went out with some friends to the big beach party, and then it was like a big beach meetup, so it was a lot of like strangers around and things like that too. And at that time I was still really bald and just kind of looked sick and stuff like that. And then I went to, like, a lot of people were going to the bar afterwards, and I went to the bar after that night, and I didn't drink, but I had like one drink. It was like I just didn't get drunk, but I was looking at the environment that I was in out at the bar and like how people were like acting towards each other and how like they were even treating me like looking sick and stuff like that. Not any of my friends, but just like random strangers and stuff like that. And I was like, I really just having like a come to Jesus moment almost. And I was like, these are not the environments that like serve me anymore. And I was like, this is not where I want to be. Like, I didn't go through all of this to spend my weekends at the bar anymore. And I realized that. And so I realized that I was searching for something greater in my life, something that gave me purpose, that gave me clarity, that helped others, just something, more than what I was doing before. And so I kind of sat and reflected on that for a week. And my friends were going to this music festival called Halloween, which is about 3 hours north of here in the Spirit of the Sewanee Music Park. And so my chapter 3 of my book is called Spirit of the Sewanee, and it ends at Halloween. And that was one of the most transformative weekends of my life because I went there, man, and the environment there was one that was fostering unconditional love. It was like people wanted you to feel free to be yourself, to find yourself, to act as silly and goofy and weird as you wanted to or as you felt to, and follow what felt natural to you and be in the environment. And just like, it was a place where I was like, I want to bring this environment to people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I want everyone to feel what I feel here, which is that you can just be your authentic self. You don't have to change for anyone. You don't have to conform to anything in society. Come here. We will take care of you. You will be supported and loved. And that weekend, man, I just really found out I had the love from others. I had the love that, I felt that love from them. I knew what I loved about others and I felt that love for them. And that environment that I had, man, just really allowed me to see for the first time in years what I loved about myself. And ultimately, I realized throughout that entire weekend that even though I was going through a lot still physically, I didn't look the same that I typically did. You know, I still had a lot of trials and tribulations that I was going through. I was bringing so many different groups together that weekend through love, through laughter. I was being funny. I was joking. You know, people were asking. You know, my story got mentioned up a couple times, so I would talk about my story, and like I just realized that like I wanted to spread love to the world, and like I wanted to connect people through love, and that it was the universal language that connects all of us. And that, you know, as long as that we all have our differences, but one thing that we all are the same is that we are all made in the image of love, and that we all carry this essence of love inside of us. And that if you spread that, we can connect all of us together, no matter, you know, who we are and what we do, and what our, you know, what we think of ourselves. And so that weekend really just left me with like this burning desire of like, I want to bring people together. Like, this is my goal. Like, this is why I've gone through this. These are the lessons that I needed to learn. I need to stop, you know, serving only myself and serve others and spread love into their life. And with the story and what I'm going through, I know that I can transform people's lives by sharing what I found as I've gone through the most difficult time in my life. And so that weekend, man, was just like you probably have a couple weekends like that, Steven, where you look back and you're like, man, you're like, that weekend like really put me on a different path in life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you have anything like that you would even want to share about your like that weekend for you, but you know, but we all have them. You know what I mean? Like, that moment was pivotal in me. Like, I was going this way, and then it just put me into a completely different direction. And so after that, man, you know, I really started to just, like I said, find love everywhere in life, man. I loved life again. I loved myself. I knew that I needed to utilize that love to figure out my passions and how I was actually going to bring people together through love. And so my brain was finally just like clear of all the negativity, the hate, the sorrow, the remorse, the regret. I had forgiven myself for everything that I'd done. I'd forgiven others for everything that they had did to me. You know, I had a romantic thing come into my life too, so I had that love, and it was just like all this love in my life. Like, if I like, my brain was finally just like not focusing on the negativity in life, and it was like at that point when, and I didn't call it God at that point, but it was at that point I was like higher power, energy, the universe. At that point, you know, God started sending messages into my head and started showing me signs, and it was like everything was just connecting of like everything in my life. And you know, I went through this journey, and I talk a lot about it in the book, but I went through this journey where I saw all these signs that pointed towards me writing a book, and how I was always good at writing. I was always good at expression. I was always good at telling stories, providing detail to people, providing context, comprehension. I took a bunch of AP classes in high school, and in AP classes, you take a test at the end. And if you get, it's not a test to pass the class, but it's a test to get college credit if you get a 4 or above. And the only class that I ever got a 4 or above on was AP English language. And that was all about reading and writing and comprehension and telling stories and things like that. And so I knew that I had a natural knack and gift for that. And so it was something that I hadn't done in a while, and it was not something that I was polished in or anything like that. But I knew that I could tell a story and that I could connect with people's hearts. And so I started writing the book, and I realized that I was putting Facebook statuses like every few weeks to just keep people that I knew in the loop and just let them know like this is what's going on. And I started to realize that in every single one I mentioned love, and that was so important like in my journey. And so I just started writing, man, and I just started writing about all the messages of love that God was sending to me, in my opinion. And it's not even in my opinion. I know for a fact that I was being sent messages from something greater than myself, because it was like I just started typing and they were just flowing out of me, and I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to stress. I would just start typing, and it was like next thing you know, I had written like 2,000 words in like an hour. And you know what I mean? And it was like something else was channeling these messages through me, that it wasn't just me, that I was finally clear enough in the head that I could receive God's messages and what he wanted me to serve to the world, which is ultimately love. And so I just started writing messages of love, and I didn't even know if I was going to write about my story. I just started writing all the messages of love. And then as I went through that and things like that, I went back to Baltimore for a little bit. This was around December. So I went back to Baltimore for a little bit for the holidays and things like that. And I was drinking with friends back there because, you know, like, you know, going back to Baltimore, a lot of drinking, a lot of stuff around there. So I was drinking a lot. I came back in January. I had a New Year's Eve party that I went to, and I drank a lot because I have a hard time controlling it. And and I really realized after that, I felt terrible after that weekend, Stephen, because I was, still physically recovering from everything. And I had terrible heartburn and indigestion, to the point where I was like throwing up, like, because it was so bad. And the drinking just made it worse. And it was terrible. And I went on vacation with a woman that was very important to me in my life, that is so very important to me in my life. In the beginning of January, and we talked a lot about it. And she was like, you should probably not drink at least until, like, all of this, gets taken care of. Oh, I got to backtrack a little bit before I say I'm good at telling stories, and I constantly have to backtrack.
No, you're good. You're good. You've done super well so far.
Good. In the beginning of December, I went for my checkup appointment because in October they said that basically after the surgery that I was good, my blood levels were good. They removed all the teratoma. So I went back in December for my first checkup. They did a scan and they noticed a lump in my neck right above my collarbone. And they basically were like, we're going to have to remove it. We're pretty sure the teratoma has spread up to your neck. And at that point, at that time, and then in November, early December, that really broke me because when you have cancer down here, it seems far away. And you're like, it's still scary, but it's like it just seems farther away. And when it comes up, when it starts to spread and come up to here, it feels like it's like attacking you, like your body is like eating itself. And it felt just really close to me, and I could literally feel it. Once they pointed it out, I could feel it in my neck, and it was like it felt like I could feel it every day, and it was getting bigger every day. I don't think that that's the case, but like in your mind starts playing tricks on you, man. And it was like I really was just questioning my own mortality at that time, and so I was really searching for, you know is it like death? Like I was like, if I die now, am I okay? Do I feel like I've, made amends and forgiven myself for the things that I've done? And, and ultimately I found that through apologizing to the person that, I was with, the girl that I was with for 7 years back in Baltimore that, really, I treated her terribly. And when she broke up with me, it broke my heart. And I ran down here to Florida, and I realized that I needed to reach out to her from an unconditional place, not trying to get her back, not trying to have any gain of my own, but just let her know that I'm sorry and that I forgive, like, that everything that happened, like, was my fault, and that I had to find that forgiveness, like to forgive myself, forgive her, and like just find that in my life. And so I found that, and I did that, and so that really kind of set me on a better path going forward, and come to terms with, if I were to die, it's okay. Like I am forgiven myself, forgiven others. I can move past this. And in December, I kind of went through that journey in December of finding that forgiveness still, and drinking and stuff like that, and then the New Year's Eve party happened, and then I went to Mexico on vacation before I went to the neck surgery, because I was like, screw it, I'm going to go on vacation and have fun before I have this neck surgery. I went with a woman that's really important to me, and she kind of talked to me a lot about, she really helped me throughout my battle with cancer, man. And just like, understanding like, concept like death and, just our mortality. And she believed in God and a higher power. So she really helped, show me that like, hey, Joe, like everything you're going through and like the signs that you're seeing, like it's because that God is real, and like he's showing you these things so that you can have purpose and that you can find something greater than what you were doing prior to this. He puts you through suffering because that's the only way for you to learn lessons and to find the things that you need to find. And so, she really helped me understand that. And she helped me that weekend realize that like I needed to stop drinking during my neck surgery. And so I ended up coming back, having neck surgery. She actually picked me up from the hospital. I only stayed there for like a day. Everything went super quick. I only stayed for a day. She took care of me a lot when I took me back to my house, took care of me a lot with everything that I had going on. So I really appreciate her. And then I talk about her a lot in my book and what she did for me. And then in February, some things were happening in my life that were kind of crazy. And the book wraps up with me and on this day in February, and the realizations that I had. And the realizations that I had on that day were that I had finally forgiven myself for everything that had happened. I had forgiven myself for everything that I had done. I wasn't ashamed of anything that I had done or anything that had happened to me anymore. I forgive everyone. I forgave the world. I forgave God, and that I understood why I went through what I did. And at that point, it unlocked everything for me. It was like my third eye was just like blasted off into the universe, and I started realizing like, when I was writing the book, I had only been writing my messages of love and the diary journal entries that I had during chemo and stuff like that. And I wasn't really sure where it was going to go. But at that day, I realized I needed to write everything that had happened in my past and share everything that I did to people and everything that had happened to me, because I had finally forgiven myself and I wasn't ashamed of it. And if I shared with other people that you could find that pathway to forgiveness and not being ashamed, then other people could find that path. And that if I didn't share my story because I was scared or ashamed of what had happened to me, that I would be serving my ego and not serving God. And if I were to serve God and serve a higher purpose in the collective, I got to share everything with everyone so that they know that no matter what happens to you in your life, you can find this. You can find this forgiveness for yourself and find what I found. And it was like at that point from that day, boom. And in the next 10 days or in the next week, I wrote like 35,000 words in 7 days.
Wow.
and wrote like the entire story. And it was not something that my humanly flesh would have possibly been able to done. I slept like 2 hours every single night and was never tired because something else was channeling it through me. And, I've come to realize that that was God. And, I finished the book and, went through, and realized at the end of the book and how I wrapped everything up was that like not only did I want to write this book to help people find love in their lives and see what I found throughout my journey in the story, but that I wanted to give people the same environment that I had during cancer that allowed me to unlock this, which was unconditional love from others, right? And support. And no matter what happens, we will have your back. And so that's why I wrote the book, A Life with Love, and started a charity, which I don't know if you can see, A Life with Love. And so our charity at first my mission was to really just bring people together through love and through, events like yoga and other stuff like that, raise money for cancer patients. And we did that. I donated $500 to the Children's Cancer Center of Tampa. We raised a bunch of money selling these shirts and selling the book. I donate all profits from my book, A Life with Love, to the charity as well. I originally had it marked up so that I could do that, and then I just made it as cheap as possible. So I don't really make much off of it to donate anyways, but the little I do, I send over. But really, I made it as cheap as possible because I want the message to get out there, man, and I want people to read it because I do believe that it's a very powerful message inside of it. We also donated $750 directly to a cancer patient's family locally here in the Florida area. His son, Declan, has cancer, and so we donated that directly to him. And we're doing a bunch of things now where I am building towards these like healing centers where we're going to work on creating like natural medicines, preventative medicines to help people with like inflammation and other things that cause cancer and stuff like that. And like really dive into like that research side of things that promote, hopefully things that, preventative medicines, like things to promote better health and stuff. And ultimately, like I want to, have more workshops around, talking about God and talking about love and specifically scriptures around love, because I do believe like as I started to dive into my journey with spirituality, and I'll kind of get into that in a second. Anybody that doesn't believe in God or anything like that, I don't force it on anyone, but it's truthfully has changed my life, realizing that there is something greater out there. And so I do like to share it because if one person listens to it and decides that it's something that they are interested in learning more about, I think that it will change their life as well. And so when I wrote the beginning of February, when I wrote this 35,000 words in 7 days, I realized like God is real, a higher power is real. There's something out here. You know what I mean? Like and it like put me on this journey of like finding everything. And so I started with Buddhism and New Age spirituality. And Buddhism is all about suffering, and we suffer because of karma, and it's because we do our actions based off our ego, which causes negative consequences to come into our lives. And the practices with Buddhism is to like deconstruct your ego and to live by a certain moral code and righteousness in order to not have those karmic effects come into your life. I thought that was really fascinating, and there's a bunch of practices that you can practice and work on, like letting go of things. Like there's this practice called the realm of 3,000 men. I think I'm saying that right, where like you basically feel all 3,000 expressions of emotions that you have in like 1 minute, like 1 second, so that way you can like release and let go of anything that happens in your life. And I thought that was really cool, and so I just like it was fascinating to me, so I just started like doing a deep dive and everything like that. And ultimately though, like we live in a society where it's hard to just completely deconstruct your ego on your own, especially with like we have Instagram and Facebook, we have our name everywhere, like we have to make money for ourselves, like it's hard to deconstruct the ego. Like I'm not a guy like meditating in the woods, just I have to live a life, so it's hard to do. So I kind of like went down this path of that and still kind of struggled and trying to connect with God every single day. And then I found Hinduism, and Hinduism is fascinating. It talks about the Brahman, which is one source and energy god, and that we carry a speck of the Brahman in us called the Atman, and that essentially, like, our lives that we have to live and the things that we have to do here on this earth put things inside of us that keep us from being able to tap into the spirit of God. And so it talks about how you can shed those things and pray and do all these other things that allow you to tap more into that divine power, essentially, which I thought was fascinating as well. But again, a little hard to do in the society that we live in. And I was just really like going on this journey of following the signs. And ultimately, very recently I started diving into the Bible because of some signs that God was giving me. I was getting a lot of Christians, young Christians, were getting placed into my life randomly. I say randomly, but God puts people in your life for a reason, in my opinion. And so I really just started to think, like, is he showing me that, like, I need to get to Jesus Christ? And that was exactly what it was. And I started to read the Bible, and I realized that it wasn't what I thought it was. And it's not just like good messages of like love thy neighbor and stuff like that either. It is a complex book that dives into why we sin, why we struggle, why we suffer, why there is, and ultimately how Jesus Christ did come for our salvation, and why we can lean through him to not have this suffering anymore. And why, if we have him, we don't feel alone and we don't have to do it all ourselves. And truthfully, I know that God presented himself to me as love and had me go through all these other different pathways because I had a huge ego and I needed to deconstruct and strip down that ego a little bit before I found Jesus Christ. And I understand too that Christianity was the religion that scared me the most, because a lot of the people that I look like, you look at TV and you look at some of the people that follow the Christianity and things like that, and you're like, they seem like hateful and like rigid and like judgmental, and you're like, and for me, like, I never wanted to be like that, so I was like, whoa, like, I don't think that that's for me. But as I started to connect more with people in real life that actually follow the teachings of the Bible and actually study it and actually believe in the actual teachings of Jesus Christ, I realized that there are people that really embody the Holy Spirit, and they really, really, really are genuinely trying to serve a greater purpose in life. And that, and as I've started to immerse myself in the Bible and go to church and really believe in Jesus Christ, everything has just been unlocked for me. And like now, truth be told, Stephen, like I quit alcohol and a bunch of other things, but like I was still like utilizing marijuana a lot. I even dabbled a little bit into like psychedelics and stuff like that. And ultimately, like, they helped me find God, but I realized that like those were instant gratification things to find something that I could find myself if I devoted myself to my faith and devoted myself to God. And so now I'm finally at a point where I'm completely sober, completely free of sin. I still have certain sin, but trying to shed all the sin in my life. And ultimately it's putting me on this path where I'm working out every day now consistently. I have so much energy, I feel so much love and support, and I want to give so much unconditional love and forgiveness to others, because I realize now, they talk about it in the Bible, that God is like a spirit and he can take many different forms, but I realize that the essence and spirit of God is unconditional love and forgiveness. And I realize that now ultimately that is my purpose in life and what I want to embody and give to people, which is ultimately unconditional love and forgiveness, man. And that's my story.
Amazing story. Absolutely incredible. And I think that's a great place to put a bow on it. So you mentioned the title of your book, A Life with Love. Where is it available?
So it's available on Amazon. If you type, I actually was in the top 10 of spiritual bestsellers when it first released. So if you type in A Life with Love, Joseph Karasek, it'll pop right up. Honestly, if you type in A Life with Love, it usually says A Life with Love by Joseph Karasek as one of the first options. Yeah, man, I would love for you guys to read the story. Like I said, it's $0 on Kindle, so you don't pay anything for it on Kindle. And if you want to buy a hard copy, it's $4, and I think it's like 20 some cents that is the profit that I make. And anything that does come to me, I donate directly to the nonprofit for the mission that we're trying to serve, which is help others and transform their lives through love. So I would love if you support me, support us. And my Instagram handle is Joe Carey, JoeKarey. Karrey. Facebook, you can search me up by my name. I'm the fourth, so Joseph Karasek, IV. And then all the foundation pages are attached to my personal pages as well, so you can go see some of the different things that we've been doing, and ultimately the vision that we're building out towards, which is healing and helping people and helping them find greater purpose in life.
Incredible. Yeah, I definitely want to get a copy for up here on the shelf. So, Joe, thank you so much for being on It Takes Balls.
I appreciate you, Stephen. Thank you for having me. Take care and have a great weekend.
For more information and resources for your testicular cancer journey, visit testicularcancerawarenessfoundation.org. You can also follow us on social media at Testis Cancer. We're on Facebook at Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation.